Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video. It is time to finally talk about this new Model Y. It was just unveiled last night as I'm recording this for the China and Eastern and kind of South Pacific markets. We've seen it on Hong Kong's website, Australia, China, and a few others, of course. This is not uncommon to be released before the North American market. We saw this with the Highland. It was September 9th/10th in 2023 when it was unveiled to China, and then January 9th, what day is it? Yeah, January 9th when it came to the North American market. Notably, yesterday was January 9th, so we thought maybe they could be unveiling it for North America yesterday, but alas, they didn't. It was China. What was interesting is that there were some leaks yesterday morning for the Model Y Juniper. I'm still going to call it Juniper. I still call this Highland. Code names, whatever. But I wonder if Tesla unveiled it in response to the leaks because it was finally out in the open, or if they were already planning on that time frame. I don't know for sure, but here's everything we know and a little discussion between me and Kyle about the new Model Y Juniper. So for reference, here's my Model 3 Highland. This has been a very trusty, capable, easy to recommend vehicle. This is the base model, the long range rear wheel drive, and it is just so good. That's why we had to have one here out of spec for comparisons, for testing, for getting second place in the I-90 Surge. Now that was one provided by Tesla. And we're really looking forward to trying out the Model Y as soon as we can get our hands on one. Kyle's actually going to China tomorrow, basically, maybe in 2 days. And maybe he can find one, although it's not likely. I think their unveiling is different from how soon they can actually deliver it. But the changes are kind of what we would expect mostly. It does keep the same overall shape as the outgoing Model Y. The doors and mirrors look pretty much the same. Even the dimensions, the width and the height are identical. The length is roughly 40 millimeters longer, I think. And so that's similar to Model 3 Highland, where the front bumper and rear taillight area are what were actually changed. Everything else was kept largely the same. Tesla on their website does denote that it is an entire redesign, but I mean, come on, it looks like a Model Y, which for a lot of people is fine. However, the styling doesn't actually excite me that much. I was surprised a little bit to see the light bar, but having seen Cybercab now, that's not entirely surprising, I guess. I just expect it to really be Model 3 Highland, just elongated on the upper side. The new headlights do seem to split at the end of the light bar, which is probably where the turn signal indicator is, and then right below them is where the actual headlights are with no separate fog lights. And they also have the air intake inlet on either side of the bumper, which I think is a good design choice. That's actually one thing I don't like about my Model 3. This whole bumper is just one huge piece of nothing. It doesn't have the air inlets like the old Model 3 had with all trims, or the new Model 3 Performance has. That looks cool, but I get it. That is technically probably an aerodynamic penalty, which is why we've seen worse efficiency in the new Model 3 Performance than, of course, the long-range all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. You'll also note on those images there is a camera below the front bumper area above the lower lip, of course, but the Highland was also shown early on with some camera down there, and then it was not in final production. Hopefully it is actually in final production. I think that would help with the automatic parking and just overall awareness around the vehicle. And the rear camera was also raised a bit to hopefully improve with it not getting so dirty so fast. I do wish there was a rear camera washing situation, but I guess we'll gloss over that. So the light bar going across the front, but also the back is a unique thing. Some people have, funny enough, equated the light bar in the back to like a Dodge Challenger, which is pretty hilarious. But it is, yeah, it's a notable design element. And of course, instead of having the T Tesla logo on the back, they now have Tesla written out, just like the new Model 3 has back there. Beyond the dimensions being approximately the same, the weight does also seem to be very similar. The rear wheel drive is actually a little bit heavier than the outgoing one by 25 something pounds. And then the all-wheel drive is a tiny bit lighter, about 18 pounds lighter. So I'm not surprised about the entry model being a bit heavier because they have added features to the base model. So it is interesting that the all-wheel drive is actually a little bit lighter. Not really sure what goes into account on that. Maybe we'll see Sandy Munro do a teardown and really figure out what could be changed. As far as speed and power, you have 5.9 seconds 0 to 60 with the rear wheel drive and a blistering 4.3 seconds with the all wheel drive. And that is basically, from our impression, possibly because it's launching with a first edition. First edition gives you little badges, puddle lights, little first edition things all around the car, but that also means acceleration boost as standard. That's what probably gets it to 4.3 seconds. Otherwise, I'm guessing they'll eventually come out with a non-first edition, which will probably have no acceleration boost, which will probably be 4.8 seconds or so, 0 to 60. You also have the range figures, which across the board seem to be about 4 to 8% improved. You do have the new entry 19-inch aero wheels, but also the slightly bigger 20-inch wheels. Those, of course, have an impact on your range, roughly 3 to 7% impact. But either way, the range is improved across the board, just not dramatically, which is a bit disappointing. You, of course, see huge numbers with the CLTC estimated range, like up to 719 kilometers. But CLTC is a Chinese metric that everyone in China themselves just ignore because they know it's absolute bullshit. The inside as well, very similar to the new Model 3 refresh. You'll see very similar seats, heated and ventilated finally. The outgoing Model Y did not have any sort of ventilated seats. The wording on the website is a little funky. You can't quite tell if the rear seats are also ventilated, but we do know the rear seats are actually power folding in the new Model Y, which is really cool. They also adopt the rear screen. So now finally all Tesla models have the rear screen. And I think all of them now have ventilated seats, which is great. I mean, that's another showcase of the base model having ventilated seats. So many other cars from other companies, other brands, you have to pay for much higher trims to get that feature. Even a middle trim, it's rarely found in the base model. The steering wheel is very similar, but we have noted with some images that there are stocks in some images, not in others. From what I can tell, right-hand drive markets seem to have stocks. Left-hand drive don't seem to, but also it could be the weird angles. We're grasping at straws that Tesla has dropped on their very simplest, minimalist website, trying to find out as much as possible. The screen is, of course, also a little bit bigger in the new Model Y to match Model 3, I'm guessing. And yeah, with the rear screen as well. I'm guessing center console will be pretty similar. I, of course, have this little Joua thing, which I love, to charge devices very fast, and even an integrated USB-C cable. Just a little shout out to those guys. But otherwise, storage up here, probably the same. A little bit different trim around the wireless phone charger from what I can tell. I really wish they were like magnetic Qi 2 wireless chargers, but alas, at least you have some USB ports. But only one USB port right here, none up here, and then 2 in the back. So I wish they would add more up here. That's partially why I also got this thing. Otherwise, door cards seem to be a little bit different. I actually like them better in the new Model Y. And the lighting is, of course, the same. Would have been cool to see a little bit more interior ambient lighting, but I guess that could fall into the cheesy, overdone category if they weren't careful. And the dash, everything looks quite similar. And the steering wheel looks similar too. So glad to see everything brought up to par with the Model 3 Highland, which we really love. I was convinced looking at their brief little glimpse of the software on their website that there was a close button after the frunk was open, but now I'm not seeing it. I don't know if that was changed or if I was just far too excited, but it looks like the frunk may not actually be powered, which I guess brings me to one of my main issues. I don't think the improvements are actually enough. I mean, on one hand, I feel like the Model Y is just such an easy car to recommend. Even in its outgoing model, it's already one of the best-selling cars on the planet. It just does a lot of things well. And so they took that and tweaked everything to make it a little bit better. A lot of minor complaints about the old Model Y are now resolved. But they didn't take any crazy strides to jump into the future, and that's like my major issue. But enough with the facts and figures. Let's jump into the virtual podcast studio with Kyle, who is on a road trip but at a charger in a Model Y competitor, just so he can dissect his thoughts and feelings on the Juniper.
Hey guys, it's Kyle. I'm sitting here at a charging station, but I want to share some of my thoughts on this refresh Model Y from at least from what we've seen so far. Jordan's already walked you through all the specifications, all the updates, and some of his opinions, and now it's time for you to get mine. Well, I think, first of all, whenever one of the best-selling vehicles, especially electric vehicles in our case for this channel, gets an update or a refresh, we should all take notice. We take notice. We try and get the videos to you as quickly as possible. We knew this was coming, and hopefully you guys checked out our Out of Spec podcast episode that's already been live from the Unveil, basically with all the information from the get-go. But now we've had not quite 12 hours, just about 12 hours to soak everything in. And I think Tesla kept it pretty tame for this update. So I think there's two sides of this equation. There is the car enthusiast, the Kyle that wants to see fast charging, longest range, what's the next greatest thing? And then there's the realistic side of what really is going to drive sales for a relatively small amount of cost. And first of all, let's start with what they actually did do. Well, they updated the styling a little bit, and I think they kept it pretty tame. Light bar front and rear is, you have eyes, you can make up your own opinion. I think the front looks great. I think the back looks odd, but again, it's just in photos, and sometimes changes like this do take time to grow on us. I think the overall blob shape of the Model Y has just never really done it for me. But again, you buy this car not because it's the most beautiful designed vehicle in existence. You buy this because it's a practical, well-priced family car to do the daily driving errands with fantastic software, and everything is just vertically integrated from the app on your phone all the way to the charging experience. It just works, and that is the Tesla magic. So now that the Model Y got an update, well, I think they've really fixed some of the key issues we had with Model Y. I say some of, not all of. First of all, we just did a video not long ago on why Alyssa hates the Tesla Model Y. It was ride quality, some interior materials, the boominess, the NVH of the car. And overall, I think that while we haven't tested it yet, a lot of the improvements here with the refresh are going to make it just a little bit softer, a little more compliant, give it this next generation, higher adjustability type feel with that passively adjustable damper. It's a frequency response damper, so it can adjust its output based off of the input frequency that it's getting. There's like a little check valve in the damper. And while it's not an active damper like Model 3 Performance and even this Kia EV6 GT I'm sitting in right now have, it is still allows for some adjustability, and they tuned it so well in the Model 3. I'm hoping that the Model Y got that same tuning ability where it's just not so stiff and bouncy all the time, where it can get just a little bit more compliance, a little bit more soft, but still composure when you drive it fast and quickly, which I've always been a fan of driving Model Y quickly. So many people don't like it. I think they're fun to drive fast. They're oversteery, they're like enjoyable, and it might be a little bit too hardcore for some normal people out there. Some other things, my thoughts on the updates that I think are good. Well, first of all, the new interior stuff with that rear screen, with the stockless design for at least left-hand drive markets, as far as we can tell. They've just brought it up to what we expected from the Model 3. Now, I think it's still cool that they're offering a stock in certain markets or optionally available. I'm not totally sure. I think that's awesome. But that's, again, some people like it, some people hate it. It's up to you. I prefer stocks. That's my view, but I can live without them just fine. I've had the chance to own and drive both vehicles, stockless and with stocks, and it honestly doesn't totally impact my day-to-day driving ability. Yeah, so Model Y as a whole is like just bringing it up to where Model 3 Highland was. A little bit more premium, a little bit updated styling, give it this freshness. They're doing this launch series in China. First time we've seen them do something called a launch. They've always called them Foundation or Signature. So now they're calling it Launch Series. Comes with some badges, the acceleration boost, stuff like that. I think that's all cool. And especially in the Chinese market, to have something unique and new is awesome. So I expect we're going to see a large influx of orders from this. But what more could they have done? I really think the range is fine on Model Y. I don't think many Model Y owners are saying they want more range. Of course, there are some who want 1,000,000 miles of range, and look, we'd never turn down more, but I think for the same price, we've just seen so many competitors come out with faster charging vehicles. Yes, it can hit a peak of 250 kilowatts on the all-wheel drive version. That's awesome, but then it just dies. It comes right down. The curve is not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. And so I was really hoping to see next generation battery tech, maybe the latest 4680 cell in here that actually can work and actually can charge. And we've just seen no indication, at least for the China models, that the charging performance or the range is going to be any meaningful different than the outgoing model. It's like a couple percent more efficient, probably due to the wheel and tire package. The new tire probably makes up most of that efficiency improvement, just because tire tech is kind of like on this exponential improvement for electric cars. So if you put that same wheel and tire package on your outgoing Model Y, my guess is you're going to be within a percent or two of range back and forth. So it's not like it was a range thing. It was more styling, a little bit of tech. It massaged the interior and the ride quality a bit. And I think overall, yeah, probably a pretty good package. Model Y's always been a very good package. So I think now finally it's just going to be a top seller continuing. They've already been able to sell in massive numbers with the outgoing model that on paper doesn't have some of the features that the Chinese competition does. In the US, there's almost really no competition to a Model Y. If you just want an easy electric car to live with, man, when this comes to the US, Model Y's always kind of been a no-brainer, a huge recommendation from my side in this price category, in this feature set. And now you're basically bringing the new one here, and the American competition isn't even close to what that car can offer in terms of the integration and the ease of use and the software and the buying experience and the service experience and the reliability. Let's be honest, these things just don't have that many problems. There's always a few problem cases out there with any car, but in general, they just are rock solid. Yeah, I think this is a home run in the sense of driving sales. From the EV enthusiast side, man, I just am so let down by the charging not improving at all, which was like the one thing we really wanted to see. But I think the ride, the styling, the interior, and certainly just the refresh nature causes excitement. And I can't wait to get with one and film it for you guys. I've been saying, I'll be in China next week. I'm certainly going to try and track down one. I've not heard of any on display or at any showrooms, but if I happen to hear of an inkling of one, I will get on a plane and fly wherever and get the video for you. And we're going to nerd out about finding little blind spot indications and looking at stitching and all this little stuff just to see all the differences for real. So thank you so much for watching another Out of Spec Reviews video, and we'll see you on another one again soon. Bye-bye.